Okay, let's talk about anorexia. Yeah. I have my computer, so I'm going to be talking or referring to it sometimes just in case I don't forget anything. So I'm really wanting to take like a casual approach on this video because oftentimes when I watch videos like this, I really like when they're casual and relaxed, and that's kind of where I want to take this video. So let's begin. Obviously, we can look at the current social landscape and understand what's popular, and that is leaning towards anorexic, thin, prone bodies. Thinness is deemed as socially acceptable, more so than obesity is, and I'm not trying to frame one against the other. Both extreme thinness and extreme obesity are not sustainable nor healthy. So yeah. Let's begin with social media and celebrity culture, just kind of as a basis to understanding why thinness is so prevalent in social media, in film, in what we see in the digital landscape. So I hate to do it, but I am gonna address Ariana Grande. I feel guilty for this because I think she's getting so much fucking scrutiny online. Not only her, but women in general are constantly scrutinized for their physical appearance, and I think that it's crazy. As much as I love the collectiveness and the community that a lot of us feel like we have on social media, there's also this unwavering entitlement that we feel we have the right to constantly talk about someone's appearance, and Ariana Grande is no exception. She is looking incredibly thin in recent videos. I'm sure you guys have seen her most recent, I don't know if she's doing a tour, but she's like doing live shows, and she's looking incredibly thin, much thinner than she has before. Another example that came to mind was Lily Collins. She was in that movie about EDs, about anorexia. I forgot that movie, something bodies, but she's also pretty visibly thin. Another one is Cynthia Erivo. She lost quite a bit of weight. So there's always this discussion about weight, and GLP-1s are super prevalent right now, super common. You know, thinness is on the rise, I would say. And as much as we had like body positivity and self-love, shout out to, I think her name is Mia, the YouTuber that talked about this similar topic. She acknowledged the body positive movement that happened in, I think, like 2015-16 time. I think we are regressing. We are regressing, and we're going back to this like heroin chic, as she mentioned in her video, approach to food, which is don't eat at all and be a very thin frame. This connects to poverty. Specifically, I'm gonna be touching on Canada and US. So how is this relevant? How the fuck is poverty relevant to anorexia or extreme thinness? So just as an example, I want you guys to understand that poverty is living below the livable income amount. That's from what I remember the definition. Okay, so essentially you cannot access adequate food, adequate resources. You can't provide for yourself fully or your family. A lot of poverty-ridden communities struggle with food insecurity. Food insecurity is limited access to adequate nutrition due to low income or social constraints. So people with low income or in the lower socioeconomic status cannot access fresh produce, meat, dairy, things that would make an individual healthy or have a nutritious diet. They do not access, and they tend to lean towards processed foods, frozen meals, things like that. And I also just want to touch on a quick stat. Food insecurity affected 9.8 million Canadians in the year 2025 and 18.3 million Americans in the year 2024. Now, judging by what I'm looking at when I see to the grocery store, when I'm looking at the prices, that shit's probably gone up at least $1 million, because these prices are fucking ridiculous, okay? This is where poverty is incredibly influential in our body types, what we look like, how stressed we are, our mental and emotional well-being. Because tell me how it's fair that a family of 4 cannot afford fresh produce or fresh meat or dairy. I don't know if you're picking up what I'm putting down, but ultimately there's a huge gap between the lower socioeconomic group and what they have access to or their resources that the government provides for them, and people who are in upper, wealthier socioeconomic statuses and how they can access adequate nutrition, and in any case, I would even argue extreme priced fucking food, okay? But anyway, that has nothing to do with this. What I'm trying to say is that there's definitely a correlation, because obviously if you are poor, you cannot not only get proper nutrition, you likely do not have food for a gym membership, you don't have food for, you're also under stress because you have financial burden that you're worrying about, so you probably don't have access to therapy. There is so many layers. Like, this is not something that I just want to like touch on physically, you know? Anorexia equals rich. That's not what I'm trying to say. More so, I'm trying to say that if you are healthy, or if you even have the ability to be extremely thin because you want to for aesthetics, you are privileged, and or you have likely more money than a lot of people do. Because it's not like people who are poor want to be obese, or it's not like people who are poor want to be unhealthy. They do not have the money to buy proper food. They do not have the money to go to the gym like you and I do. There are so many aspects to one's life that on the surface, oh, they're lazy. That cannot be true. Come on. And like, you can't look at someone who is extremely thin and think the opposite, like, oh, they're not lazy because they're super thin, so they have self-control, etc. So many layers. Even for me, like, as someone who struggled with their weight, when I'm stressed, I will be eating. When am I stressed? When I'm worried about money, when I'm overworked, when I'm underpaid. Like, these are real things that I think are very common in today's economic situation in Canada, in the United States, in parts of Europe. And yeah, so like I kind of said, I'm not blaming poverty on obesity, and I'm not blaming wealth on thinness. More so, I just want to make a connection. How income and socioeconomic status or comfortability can influence society and what we deem as attractive. Let's just be quite frank, like, in the public eye, if you are obese or you are overweight, people do ridicule you more so. I mean, not more so, because Ariana Grande is a perfect example. People are fucking critiquing her left, right, and center. But people do not have as much respect for you, I would argue, as when you are incredibly thin. I would argue that it's because obesity is connected to being poor, to poverty. Celebrities are wealthy individuals, and they don't even have to be wealthy, but they're in the public eye. They're meant to represent a specific kind of person, a specific kind of status. And like, I'm just thinking of Kylie Jenner, I guess, is a great example. Like, her thing, her niche, and I don't get me wrong, her personality is amazing. I'm sure she's a lovely woman. I'm sure she's funny, she's charismatic, but ultimately a lot of these influencers would not be where they are if it weren't for their looks. And I think as consumers, I'm gonna point a fucking finger at us and you, because the amount of emphasis we put on looks is so fucking insanely annoying and also damaging. I feel like it is crazy whenever I look at someone's photo, and even me, like, I'm myself part of the problem, because I compare myself all the time to Kylie Jenner or all these fucking insane beautiful women who are so incredible, but yet they have so much work done and they have the money for it. They go to Erewhon, they go in their Range Rovers. Like, there's such a difference in lifestyle. How am I supposed to compare myself? Not only that, but why would I emphasize their appearance when we are living completely different lives? Why would I promote something that is so unattainable to the average person? And that's where I'm pointing the finger. It's like, a lot of you guys kind of, how do I say this kindly, like, need a reality check, in the sense that, like, although yes, influencers are amazing and they're nice people, holy fuck, is there ever a pedestal on looks? And I feel like the more I age, the worse it's getting on social media. I feel like we're getting into a really questionable territory. I feel fucking bad for Ariana Grande, because it's not like her eating habits have anything to do with the social landscape. Like, I want to make one thing very clear. Eating disorders have nothing to do with the outside world. I understand that it's all mental. It is all emotional. It is all trauma. Like, there's so much control that eating disorders enable. And that's why people do it, is because we have an area of our life that we can control, and that feels good, and that feels safe, and that feels comfortable. But what I do want to say is there is no ethical way to promote extreme thinness, and there's no ethical reason to promote it either. Because if we have people in the digital landscape or in the public eye so heavily investing in thinness and looking their best, what the fuck do we actually have at the end of the day? I don't know. It seems like we're really veering towards somewhere scary, and I'm part of the problem. Like, once again, I find myself often constantly, you know, degrading myself or putting myself down because of my looks, and I feel like a lot of my value is tied to my looks. That's not something I think is good. That is not something I think even matters. Does it ruin my life? Like, does it run the way I live my life? Not at all. That's something I think we need to consider. Okay, this video is all over the place. Next, I want to talk about gender roles, because obviously, come on, Juju on that beat, that has to do. It is part of our society. I'm so itchy. So obviously women are marginalized. They're oppressed. And you're probably like, what? How is that? I'll tell you how. Firstly, have you seen any women president in the United States? No. Prime ministers in Canada? Also no. I mean, that's just one example. They're often not in authoritative roles. They're not often CEOs. Who are often CEOs? White men. I think white men are, you know, as we all know, top of the food chain. With that being said, because of this, a lot of women are objectified, demoralized. In the public eye, physical appearance is incredibly important. I think in day-to-day life, who gives a shit? But I think online, whoo, it is like number one. I think the reason thinness is attractive, or should I say desirable, to the greater public is because it minimizes women. How does it minimize women? This is like an analogy. So you know how women are often deemed as like annoying or whatever it may be if we are loud, demanding, bossy. That oftentimes doesn't come across as great. People don't love that, women and men. Okay, a lot of women, I catch myself doing it all the time. We're sexist as shit. Like, if I hear loud ass girls, all of a sudden I have an issue. But when it's loud men, I think it's okay. So make it make sense. Why is that? Why is that? Because women typically shouldn't be super loud. We shouldn't be large. We shouldn't be physically and socially, we shouldn't be large. And I think that extreme thinness promotes this, like, honestly, this oppression. Because when we are physically small, we can also be socially small. We can also be less in people's way. We can be smaller. I mean, fat women, obese women do not have respect in society. Like, so it's actually crazy when I look at like comments of obese or overweight women, the lack of respect towards them because they're fat is crazy. Even myself, when I was younger, like, I was overweight as a child, and even in school, classmates, like the bullying, the jokes, you know, don't get me wrong, it's not like everybody treats you like shit just because you're fat, but there is a difference, definitely. I think the reason that thinness is so well received is because it can continue to make women small and perhaps even incapable. I've been incredibly thin once. I remember at one point in my life, I was eating very little, lost a lot of hair, etc. I think the main thing that is frustrating for me as like a consumer and watcher of like social media, social discourse, all of that, is the bullshit. The bullshit surrounding food, or should I say body image, is crazy. Like, none of us want to feel frail. Majority of us know that being incredibly thin doesn't feel good. You know, nor does being incredibly obese. Being overweight doesn't feel good either. I think what really irritates me is that people who are in the public eye for the most part do not promote a sustainable body image. A lot of them do, don't get me wrong, a lot of TikTokers, YouTubers, I see you. But people like Kylie Jenner, and I really want to emphasize on her because she's been looking incredible. Like, she looks super good, and I'm sure she eats very healthy. But people like her that have so much power, so much wealth. I think, how can we forget about this incredibly important aspect of our lives? Money. Oh, she has a fuck ton of money. Like, you don't think if I didn't have a fuck ton of money, I wouldn't get a nose job, lip filler, buccal fat? Like, I would be doing the whole thing. You would think I'm a fucking sex magnet. Like, there is no way we can ignore this. And there's so many components to extreme thinness, obesity, that are just beyond like trends, you know? It comes down to social constructs. It comes down to the way we were raised, access to resources, access to healthy, proper nutrition. With that being said, I do want to emphasize, like, and disclaim very heavily that anorexia and bulimia and eating disorders are not socially constructed. Like I said previously, we all know that that shit's all up here. Anyways, this is meant to be like a conversation. I'm not trying to say what everything I'm saying is right, and I'm not trying to say it's wrong. I just really want to open up the floor for discussion. I want to open up the floor for dialogue, because I think that there is very little emphasis on the fact that we have money that runs our world. And I feel like whenever we're pointing a finger at something, we're forgetting this huge fucking contributor to the way that we live our life. Physical image has to do with wealth, and that's all I'm trying to say. And thinness is one little bubble in this socially constructed world that we live in. And I'm not really too sure what I'm saying anymore, so I'm gonna go. Thank you so much for listening to this. Please let me know what your thoughts are on this topic. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.